on your website, you've got two numbers. For the financial impact on households.
Yep.
You say staying in the European Union would cost the UK £9,625 per household in one place, and in another place you say you would be better off to the tune of £933. So you do in fact think these sort of calculations are meaningful, and you have put some numbers on your website.
I'll answer one part of that question. The £930 is a calculation based on cheaper food prices and a range of costs that are incurred under the EU. So I don't think that's a forecast in the sense of 15 years out. If there is a forecast there that is a long-range forecast of more than a couple of years, I would agree with you. So if that is on there, we point us to where it is. And
could you tell me why you've got two such wildly divergent numbers on your website, 9,625 and 933? Which number are you banking on? Which number are you confident on?
I have to see the...
Well, these are your numbers. They're not my numbers. They're your numbers.
Can I just say, first of all, we produce probably enough material to cut down a small rainforest. I'm not familiar with every single last bit of it. The £933 I am, that's based on lower food costs and things like that. In fact, Patrick Minford from Cardiff University calculates it's upwards of £2,000. So there's lots of varying figures, but any long-range forecast is inappropriate.
Well,
so if there is one on there, I would take it down, but I'm not familiar with that.
I think it is very clear, just to reinforce what's just been said, the £933 number, that is an annual forecast, so it is much easier, clearly, to forecast for an annual saving. And there's a key difference between a 15-year forecast that you were previously alluding to.
I think the 933 number is consistent with the 33 billion which you were discussing with it's different. So
the 933
so what's the 933 based on?
That's based on data that came from the Change or Go report by Business for Britain in the middle of last year.
And so that's not the costs of regulation.
No, that's the overall saving. So it's not the cost of regulation. It includes all sorts of things.
So what does it include?
Well, I haven't got it in front of me, but it was after it's a 1,000-page report which looked at in very detail at all sorts of aspects, and that was its considered number, and that I believe is the number that Vote Leave also used because it was sourced from Business for Britain, their predecessor.
So you're saying that number includes the costs of regulation, the contribution to the EU budget, and the impact on the British economy.
Well, it's to do with food costs.
Yeah.
Or it's just to do with food costs?
No,
I'd have to refer back to it.
It's a long list of items.
I mean, if it's just to do with food
costs, it's not.
That would suggest it was about the CAP and agricultural tariffs.
I didn't say it's just to do with food costs. I said it's part of it, but I'm not. I would have to go back and actually look at that.
It's a long list of items, but for example, on the food costs, it's the lower food costs because you don't have tariffs on non-EU food products, for example. But it is a long list of items, very carefully considered, and I think it's
very carefully considered. But you actually can't tell us what it is.
Well, I haven't got it in front of me. I mean, I've been through it previously, but
okay.
We're not walking encyclopedias that carry huge amounts of information in our heads.
That's everything.
I try my best.
That's everything.
I can tell you. I can reiterate, just for the record, I have been through it, and I thought it was a very good working document.
Good. Well, I'm glad when you read it, you felt that, but it's not very enlightening for us on the committee or for the general public.
Well, it's a 1,000-page document. It's a 1,000-page document that's on the Vote Leave website. You've obviously had a copy of it. I think anybody can read it and review it, and they can either agree or disagree with my perception of it.
My understanding is that the 9,000 number comes from an analysis by Patrick Minford, of whom you were speaking earlier, and that number works on the assumption that you're going to repeal all EU legislation on social matters, employment matters, and the environment. Do you think that's realistic?
I haven't seen the report, and I'm afraid you've got us on this one. I can go away and give you a written answer, but I haven't seen Patrick Minford's report, and I don't think the 933 is based on his report.
No, but the 9625 is, and you've got that number on your website.
Well, we have a research department that employs about 6 different people that is going through all this stuff. I think they're pretty accurate, but if you've got a specific number that needs to be justified, I cannot justify it right now. I don't have the...
Well, what I'm trying to...
the point that I made at the beginning again, really, we shouldn't need to be having these exchanges. I'm sorry, but we shouldn't need to be having this information, the core information, to enable us fully to understand where these numbers are derived from, how they're put together.
But Mr. Chairman, they're often a matter of opinion.
Should be available on your website if you have qualifications, because you have personal opinions about them as well. Of course, those are also things that could be added. But what we have out there from your organisation are a range of numbers which is very difficult for us to understand and therefore are virtually meaningless in the hands of the public. It's after all the public who are complaining noisily a lot that they are not able to get high quality information from either side of this campaign, and that they're having to rely on numbers which seem to flake a little when they're looked at carefully, and that appears to be what's happening with the numbers that we're addressing that we've found on your website.
I think it's a valid point, but when you have a situation where you've got a Treasury report that's saying it's a downside of 4,500...
We're going to cross-examine the Chancellor
but I'm just saying
his report. I'd really rather concentrate on the numbers that's on your website. Helen Goodman.
My understanding is that Professor Minford is saying that all social and employment legislation should be repealed. So are you saying that in your vision of how life would be better after Brexit without the pressures for legislation and the social chapter imposed by the EU, you would want to have no holiday pay, no maternity pay, no constructive dismissal rules, no discrimination rules? Are you saying that you would like to see all those swept away?
No, not at all.
So in fact you wouldn't get those savings?
But I don't know. You're quizzing me on the report. I haven't read. I can't answer your question. But on the
so which social and employment legislation would you like to maintain?
I don't think I would want to remove any of it, but that's a matter for Parliament. I mean, the beauty of this is that powers return to your good selves and you decide what you're going to do.
But Mr Banks, don't you seem understand? You have claimed that these savings would be achieved. They would only be achieved if certain pieces of legislation were repealed.
I haven't read the report.
I am telling you what you have told the public. Those savings would only be achieved if that legislation was repealed. Once I point out to you what legislation would need to be repealed, you seem to be running away from the statements which you were quite confident of when you walked into this room.
I'm not running away from anything. I haven't read Patrick Minford's report, therefore I don't know whether your characterisation of it is correct or not. You seem to be saying that.
It would be very helpful if two things occur. One is you write to us with that, and two, that you make sure that your website fully clarifies what these numbers pertain to, so that the public themselves and others who want to check them.
But just going back on the social protection and the rest, it's up for you to elect a Labour government and to put in place what you want.
Just for the sake of... Sorry.
Okay, Helen. You've got the floor, unless you've got something important to say.
I think our website does source all this information out, and we do accept, everybody accepts, it's hard for the public to identify numbers, but our website is very clearly sourced so that people can then click through and read the report for themselves.
Okay, I'll ask you some questions that don't involve exact numbers then. I'll ask you about foreign direct investment. Now, the Bank of England, which my colleague Rachel Reeves was talking to you about before, fear that volatility and uncertainty will mean that we will see a reduction in foreign direct investment into this country. And indeed, this is borne out by statements from major industrialists like Nissan and Hitachi. And I'd like to ask you, first Mr Tyson, then Mr Banks, whether you don't have some concerns about the loss of this foreign direct investment and the impact on jobs in this country.
I have no concerns about that at all. Initially, I'm going to take you to a 2013 report, I believe by Ernst & Young, of over 2,000 multinational businesses that asked specifically whether they thought Brexit would make the UK more or less attractive for multinational businesses. And for US and Asian firms, both of those geographies said that over 60% of those firms said it would make the UK a more attractive place. And I think the proof is in the pudding, isn't it? If you look at what's been announced just recently in the last few months, in the knowledge that the opinion polls are very close on Brexit, you've had HSBC decide after a 2 or 3 year review that they're going to retain their global headquarters in London. They could easily have deferred that decision if they thought it was going to be a major problem until after the 23rd of June. They didn't, because London has so many other major attractions to offer. Let's take Boeing, big US corporation, Boeing. Okay, they've just recently announced in the last couple of months that they're going to locate their European headquarters in London. Let's take Avon Cosmetics, a US corporation, just announced they're going to move their US headquarters to London. The Pentagon no less, under the auspices of the President of the United States, have recently announced a £200 million investment in Oxfordshire. All of these are fantastic news, and it is because of the attractiveness of the UK economy and our workforce and our transparency and our legal system and language. They have nothing to do with Brexit. So I think the proof is in the pudding of what corporations are doing, and no, they are not withholding long-term investment decisions. And let's take the car businesses. There are a number of car businesses over the last 12 months who have confirmed that actually Brexit would make no difference to their UK investment plans or their UK jobs.
That's not true, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, it is. It is.
I'm sorry, it is not what they have said. They have made it absolutely clear that this is central.
I'm sorry, we fundamentally disagree. Last year, the head of UK Vauxhall said it would make no difference to their plans.
So you think that the fact that BMW have written to their employees advising them that it's in the interests of that firm to stay in the European Union can be ignored?
And BMW comes from which country?
Germany.
Germany. Of course they're going to say that.
What does that prove?
Yeah. Well, it's in their interest. Germany wants us to stay in the European Union because we're the only two major net contributors. It is not true. It is not true to say that all of the car industry leaders have said that it would damage their UK investment plans, because they haven't said that. And indeed, last year, a number of them said the opposite. So we can go back and check the statements.
So your basic view is you're not worried about this. You think that lots of people are still investing, and when I say to you, well, Nissan doesn't take that view, or Hitachi doesn't take that view, or BMW doesn't take that view, you say, well,
maybe I've given you some
specific.
I've given you some very specific examples of investment in the last couple of months that have been announced.
I would just, I mean, you yourself mentioned the President of the United States, and he did have something to say on this, and he was pretty negative about leaving Europe, I think you would agree, last week.
And for very clear reasons. Look, it may suit the United States, but what suits the United States doesn't necessarily suit the United Kingdom, and it's interesting, isn't it? He's not going to be in power for much longer, but I believe, well, certainly in the last 24 hours, for example, Ted Cruz has said we would be at the front of the line, not at the back of the queue.
Mr. Banks, do you have anything to say about foreign direct investment?
The only thing I have to say on Obama is I took my son to his piano lesson on Monday night, and the piano teacher said to me, "Well, you're something to do with Brexit, aren't you?" I don't like that Mr. Obama coming over and telling us what to do. I think I'll switch from an unchanged to
Mr. Banks, I'm not asking you about your child's piano lessons. I'm asking you about your views on foreign direct investment.
Well, a little bit of levity, surely. It's not do or die, surely. But
I know, but we haven't got that long. So
the bottom line is that when we didn't participate in the euro, we were warned that all the banks would leave London, hedge funds would go, it would be a wasteland. London is the #1 preeminent capital in the world, and there's more hedge funds and banks you can shake a stick at. They look for the fact that it's English-based, it's got legal structure, it's all sorts of different things, and it doesn't mean that because you're not part of the European Union, you're not going to get direct investment. 15 years.